The current sentiment surrounding XDefiant reminds me of another game that actually managed to turn things around to a good degree despite a rocky first season. Albeit not being a free-to-play game, Diablo 4 Season 1 had patches that completely ruined the experience for some players, making the time they spent in-game for weeks rendered useless. This brought a saying, D4 bad, that is even still echoed today amongst people who probably will never really enjoy the game, despite whatever improvements are made. And that's fine. Not everything is for everyone. At the height of the situation, there were literally players making YouTube channels using AI to make music such as D4 Bad Radio. I have to admit this is pretty hilarious, and the variety of music that they had is pretty impressive. Here goes a few examples right here. What this tells me is that players felt very strongly about the game, and a feeling such as disappointment can be stronger than hate sometimes because people don't want to let go of something they see potential in. If they are indifferent or apathetic to something, they simply don't care enough to spend energy or time on it. The fourth season really turned a bunch of things around and made massive improvements, but a game will never be able to satisfy everybody. I see XDefiant in a similar situation where it's going to take time for the game to get where it truly needs to be. And despite that, once it gets in a much better place, there's always going to be people who disapprove of it. The netcode will never truly be perfect. It's not perfect in any FPS game, but it can definitely improve over time and be less jarring and less on the extreme end. Hopefully eventually it just fades away into the background and it's just a system within the game that just feels balanced and doesn't stand out too much within the gameplay. That's all we can really ask for. Progression systems will improve over time as well as content. I think there's a lack of nuance when it comes to discussions about the game, usually not offering any actionable advice that could truly make the situation better. It's usually just emotional venting, name calling, and division between the community. This definitely at least shows that people feel strongly about the game, which is better than feeling nothing at all. People are either on the extreme end of saying that the game is irredeemable, or they say it's perfectly fine and an issue that does not affect them. This could be because of rose-tinted glasses, or it could be because of location closer to servers than others, or just good luck with how their internet routing happens to be. The game being free to play definitely earns it some points, but does not excuse it from its flaws. At the end of the day, we are spending our most valuable resource when we play a video game or consume any form of media, which is time, something no amount of money can bring back. If people are not enjoying their experience, they will use their most finite resource doing something else. As I said in my previous video, I think it is perfectly fine to play a game for a certain time period seasonally, leave, and then come back for new content. This is essentially what a live service model is. It's sort of like when an album comes out, you listen to it until you're sick of it, and then you check out the next music that comes from the artist or band. That might not be the best analogy because people usually make playlists now. I don't really listen to full albums personally unless it's right when it releases, and then I add the songs I enjoy to a playlist. Kind of like when I back out of the map selection screen if I don't want to play a particular map. I think eventually the seasonal staying power will increase as the game gets more and more content to play, such as maps and modes, progression systems. XDefiant has been compared to other Ubisoft titles that got canned, such as Hyperscape, but I think honestly in terms of the arena shooter genre, there's less competition than the Battle Royale scene. This gives them a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot. I think over time some of the people who left will come back and some won't. I don't think that we're in a situation where majority of people will be unwilling to come back and try it again. It's probably closer to like 70-30 who are willing to return with better netcode or more content. I don't think that we're in a situation where majority of people will be unwilling to come back. It's probably closer to like 70-30 who are willing to return with better netcode and or more content. There will always be people in any game that have deemed it to be just not for them, and there will also be fluctuations in player count throughout seasons. Whether it's a single player game or an online multiplayer game, the player count drops off over time. This is just natural. The same way albums have higher first week sales than the following, along with movie box office numbers. People not only have a limited attention span, but also have a limited amount of utility to be extracted from media. When you read a book, you're essentially finished with it unless you want to revisit it later on. And usually you read another book from the same author if you enjoyed the previous. Same goes for even human interaction. If you have a good first date, a second one is likely to follow. Live service games have a delicate balance where they need just the right amount of carrot on the stick to keep you coming back. In today's society of constantly scrolling a feed, hyperstimulation, eating out for dinner and spending more time at the table on our phones than together, I don't see much changing in terms of our dopamine-deprived brains reaching levels of insatiable hunger. What are your thoughts about all of this? XD bad, or does it just need a little more time in the oven?